Better Humans Tomorrow starts with better decision making today. Better decisions always start with better questions. The question is this: who was I born to be? Once you step into that, you start being that one today, right? Go make decisions today to be that one today. The way you care about yourself, right? Like, meaning, are you emotionally and physically taking care of yourself? The way you start caring about others, the way you start caring about your business, your community, your faith, your church, the people that you associate with. It all starts with you understanding that you're the one, and go be that one today.
All right, welcome back to the Better Human Podcast. Today we are sitting with Justin Prince. Justin, what is going on, my man?
Greg, what's up, brother? Thanks for having me.
Oh, man, thank you for joining. We're going to get into some amazing conversations today, specifically about your book, Be the One, which has an awesome story behind it, which is yours, and ideally going to give us a lot of insight to what we could do to, make this year an awesome, awesome year. We're in the beginning of the year. We've come out of some stuff, and this is the year for transition and growth and success and positivity. So let me start with the big question. Tell us about the title, Be the One. Where does it come from, and really, what does it mean?
Yeah, so there's two parts to it. The first part is the one. And, as you think of your life, if you think of your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, your great-great-grandparents, so if you were to go 12 generations back into your family lineage, that would be 4,094 people. So it's 4,094 people over the last 400 approximately years that lived and bled and cried and died and gave everything they had for you. And you are the one. You're the one that these folks literally laid it all on the line for. And so every breath that you have is a gift. This whole thing is a gift. And you start realizing that your life has value and purpose and meaning. You start realizing that success is an identity process. It's recognizing who you really are. And you realize, I'm the one. And I'm the one that's going to make a difference for the future generations of kids that are yet unborn. Like, I'm going to be the one that creates and designs and lives an unforgettable life that future generations look up and they say it was her, or it was him.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one that changed it for our family forever. Like, the addiction stopped with her. The abuse ended with him. Mm-hmm. The financial principles, the economic principles that changed our families, that generationally changed our family forever. It came from my great-great-great-great-grandma, my great-great-great-grandpa. And they're telling your story. So that's the first concept. The second part is this idea of be. So you'll notice it's not called become the one, it's be the one, which means be to me is a present term. You already realize you're the one. So it's not become the one, you are the one. It's go be that one today. And be the one that creates in your life versus living in a life of reaction to distraction. You become a life of intentional creation. You actually cast out a vision for your life and go create it. You be the one that designs a life, right? The way that you use your words, the way that you use your thoughts, the way that you actually live an intentional life. And then you go live an unforgettable life. And so as I look at my journey, Greg, so came from a broken home at age 12. We moved 13 times in the 7 years through the teenage years. I have no college education. I have really no professional background. I was making pizzas. I was doing construction work. I worked at a mall kiosk selling animated Bible videos. Dropped out of college with a semester, and a half of college, and got married young, had a little baby young, and life was kind of coming at me fast. And as I look at my little entrepreneurial journey, started at age 25, first business fails, below zero financially, back on credit cards, back on taxes. At one point with my pregnant wife and our two kids into the loft of my wife's parents' garage. And you start wondering, like, man, am I crazy? Like, is this ever going to happen for me? Am I chasing a fake dream? And I look back now and I've gone on to build 5 different multi-million-dollar businesses. We've generated billions and billions of dollars in revenue. And, I've spoken in 30 plus countries around the world and, written a best-selling book and this whole thing. And you're like, man, what the heck just happened? And the point is you learn a lot along the way. You learn formulas and frameworks. You learn tactics and strategies that along the way that you can actually, if someone were to apply this stuff, you almost compile it all. That's what I wanted the book to be. I wanted the book, like, I hope someone's inspired and motivated for sure. But what I really hope is that they feel taught, that there's really people that have the response has been off the charts. People are going through the book. They're like, every chapter has like homework assigned. It's very practical. It's not just like ethereal, stuff. It's real practical stuff to where you can really start to create a life that you say, this is actually the life that I want to live versus the life that I'm just going to most people drift. It just kind of happens versus like, I'm going there and I'm gonna go make it happen. So that's where the book came from. And it was really a labor of love for me to be able to pour that into the next generation of leaders around the world. But it's been really cool to kind of watch it come to life.
As you're saying, I was listening to your story, which was like really around breaking the cycle and breaking the pattern of our ancestors, our generational sort of, unconscious limiting beliefs. What were some of your limiting beliefs or that unconscious stuff that maybe bubbled up to the surface that you started to recognize? Because I would imagine that's kind of step one in all of this, which is in order to sort of break the pattern, the first thing we've got to do is almost recognize that there's a pattern.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the chapters in the book is what I call update your identity. So we started just in our discussion. Success is an identity process, and you'll never outperform the way you see yourself. So if you see yourself as a 5, you won't show up and play like a 10. If you see yourself as a loser, you won't play the game like a winner. You won't prepare like a winner. If you see yourself like a winner, you won't roll over and quit like a loser would. It wouldn't be true with your identity. You're just at some point would be like, man, this is not who I am. James Clear wrote the book Atomic Habits, and he says there's 2 boys, one of which stole the candy. And they said to the little child, they said, did you steal the candy? And the little boy said, I didn't steal it. They said to the other child, they said, did you steal the candy? And the little boy said, I don't steal. So I didn't steal that particular piece of candy is an action. I don't steal is an identity. And over time, you'll be consistent with the way you see yourself. And so I have a chapter in the book called Update Your Identity. So like think about it with your like an iPhone, for example. An iPhone, the hardware may still work, but the software needs to get updated over time. The same thing's true with the way that we see ourselves, the identity that we've anchored in with who we really are. I tell a story of a friend of mine. His name's Jaime Molina. You would love this guy, by the way, Greg. So he's lives in Southern California. One of the sweetest guys I've ever met. Married to his wife Ramona for 20 plus years. Have 4 beautiful daughters. Works in the financial services industry. Is very devout in his Catholic faith. He works with the troubled youth in his community. And he tells the youth of a story of a guy named E9400. And E9400 was born in Texas, El Paso, right on the border of U.S. and Mexico. At age 8, this little boy was introduced to alcohol and started consuming alcohol regularly. At age 9, he was abused by someone 23 years older than him. At age 14, this little boy was introduced to really hard drugs. At 15, became a mule for the cartel. At 22, was sentenced to 11 federal felonies and served multiple years in San Quentin.
Wow. And
Jaime says to these students, says, what do you think happened to E9400? And they're like, man, is he, he's like, is he dead? Is he alive? Is he on drugs? Is he homeless? Is he living his best life, or is he strung out somewhere? Is he in a gang? Is he a member of the cartel? Like, what do you think's happened? And one day he goes into the work with the kids. He says to him, he says, guys, I've got a special guest for you. They go, cool. Who's that? He said, it's E9400. And the kids are like, he goes, he's in the hallway. The kids thought, man, this guy that at age 8 was on alcohol, at 9 as a little boy was sexually molested, at 14 was on drugs, 15 was a mule, served multiple years in San Quentin. They're like, dude, this is crazy.
Right.
He walks out in the hallway to grab him, and he walks back in, and it's just Jaime. And he walks to the front of the class and he says, I am E9400. So E9400 was Jaime's identity, his prison identification when he was at San Quentin. For many years of his life, he was known as E9400. And what I'd like to remind people is you are not who you are who you were born to be. In other words, you are this potential. That's why updating the identity is so important. So you're growing into who you're born to be. And then check this out. You're also not what you did. You are what you repeatedly do. Jaime, we all make mistakes. We all don't be our best self at all times. So it's not what you did in life. It's what you repeatedly do. Jaime wasn't born to be E9400. He was born to be Jaime, this devoted husband to Ramona, this amazing father of these 4 beautiful daughters, this guy that runs a successful financial services business, the guy that is devout in his Christian faith, the guy that serves the next generation of leaders in his community. That's who he was born to be, not the identity that he had at one point. So you want to always be saying to yourself, who was I born to be? Right? Like what, and you start questioning some of the identity of like your anger and your resentment and the victimhood and the pains that you've gone through. Because what's so interesting about life, and I know you've experienced this, it's like we don't see the world as the world is, we see the world as we are. So when you see the flower and I see the thorn, the rose didn't change. Or when you see it's raining outside and you're grateful, and I look outside and I'm ticked off, the weather didn't change. Or the father has 2 sons. The father's in and out of prison, strung out on drugs, and the one son's in and out of prison, strung out on drugs, and he blames the father, and the other son's never touched drugs in his life, has a beautiful family, great member of society, and he blames the father. The father didn't change. We don't see the world as we see the world as we are. And we can always update this identity to say, I'm going to be the one for my family. You know, one thing I'll share with you is this. The word decision, I know you know this, the word decision comes from the Latin. So the scission meant to cut and the D meant off. So a decision means you cut off all other possibilities. So an incision means you cut in, a decision means you cut off, right? Well, you ask yourself, how many people does it take to break a generational curse?
Yeah.
In other words, of addiction or of abuse, or to change the financial situation for a family. How many people does it take? It takes one. It takes you. It takes your decision. It takes you saying, I'm going to be the one. I'm going to make a decision to be the one. And you've never been this old before, and you'll never be this young again. And so you can't always control what happens, but you can control what happens next, because you can make the next decision to be the one for your family and update that identity. And so, you know, as I look back on my own life, there's so many of those different, you know, moments where you almost have to like snap out of it of like, you know what? Why do I believe that?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that anymore. Like, that's not going to be the way I'm going to show up anymore. Like, what is my problem? And you start kind of deconstructing those in your mind. And you say, I'm going to show up as the best version of myself. I'm going to show up as the one that I was born to be versus the one that I've always consistently been.
Why do you think someone like Jaime, E9400, is able to do that versus E9500 isn't?
I'll share this with you. There's a concept I call rid and raise. So imagine there's a pulley system, right? So like as you pull down on the one side, the other side raises, and right, vice versa. So as you rid yourself of all entitlement, you raise your personal responsibility. So your entitlement decreases and your responsibility for your life increases. And I would encourage all of us listening to ask ourselves, where am I feeling like someone owes me something? I feel entitled. I feel like I'm going to blame it on my parents. I'm going to blame it on my family. I'm going to blame it on the government. I'm going to blame it on, society. I'm going to blame it on whatever it is. So you rid yourself of all that stuff. And then at the same time, you start raising your own personal responsibility. Say, I'm going to own my own decisions. I'm not going to whine, blame, complain, make excuses, and, basically cast onto someone else. I'm going to take responsibility for myself. Stephen Covey wrote 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and he calls it the maturity continuum. He said the lowest level is the level of dependent, which is it's the paradigm of you. A dependent person says this, Greg, you didn't come through for me. You know what? Because of you, I'm not where I want to be. So it's dependent on someone else. The next big step up of this maturity continuum is independent. This is when you're ridding yourself of all entitlement. You're raising your personal responsibility. You're independent is the paradigm of I. I'm self-reliant. I can make things happen. I can make good decisions. I can make good choices, and I will accept responsibility for what I do in my life. Right? I won't blame others. That's a huge step up. The next step up, which is the final step up, is the paradigm of what's called interdependent, which is the paradigm of we. And that is a massive step up, because what happens in the paradigm of we is it's where synergy clicks in. It's 1 + 1 = 3 or more. We can cooperate, we can collaborate, we can make things happen. It's what I call collective genius. We work as a genius together. So in other words, your best ideas, my best ideas, we work on them. We find the best ideas out of the collective. And that's the ultimate. But here's what Covey says. Covey says you can't become interdependent until you first become independent. You have to first rid yourself of all this, entitlement and raise your personal responsibility and jump up the scale. Exactly right.
Got to go through one process versus the next. There's I forget his name. I'll think of it in 1 second. He wrote a book called Tribal Leadership. I'll think of his name in a sec. But he talks about corporate culture and the whole concept of like what type of cultures do you have, right? And the pinnacle culture is like the culture of purpose. The one below that is the we, but it starts with the culture of life sucks. Right. So you walk into these companies and life sucks. And that's the culture of everyone blames everyone else.
Yeah.
Someone else's fault. I like what you were talking about before, which is that personal responsibility and accountability. You can't grow until you're willing to take that ownership and that accountability. Right. That's the foundational layer. Right. Anyway, the next layer of the culture goes into life sucks because of you. Right? If I didn't have to deal with you all day, then my life would be good. That then moves into the culture of I'm great, which is a
Hmm.
little bit of the narcissistic culture, and it creates a lot of competitiveness. So you think about the Jack Welch sort of model, which is get rid of your bottom 10%, regardless of whether they're making target or not. That's how you create a high performing team, because everyone's trying to outcompete each other, right? So I don't have to hit my targets. I just have to sell a little more than Justin does.
Yeah,
And then I'm not, then I'm above. And that creates a lot of short-term wins and stuff, but it can create a little bit of a toxic culture as well. Then you move into a really cool corporate culture, which is we're great, right? And what he also does is he says, when you look at the corporate organizations out there, only so much of a percentage of organizations are in these different types of levels. And then you get to the final one, which is the pinnacle why. So why do we get out of bed, and what is the purpose of what we're trying to do, which is very rare. But what he talks a lot about is you can't jump from the life sucks because of you to the we're great. You have to go through those stages as well. A lot of what you talk about in my work, we call it dependent personalities. They are avoidant of adult responsibilities, the ones that in
Hmm.
says don't want to grow up. And I mean, you see this in society today. You see this, not to pick on the younger generation, but you know, I'm going to make this a societal thing, regardless of the generation you're in. There's this entitlement that people are running
Of
around with,
course.
right? And it's again, it's the opposite to independence and then interdependence, right? Which I think is a very core way for us to win at life, right? That wonderful saying: you want to go fast, you go by yourself; you want to go far, you go with a team, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah, I'll share this with you as you're thinking of a corporate culture. So check this out. What I have experienced in my journey, like when we built our last business, the last business was 25 years in a row, or 25-year-old company, 8 years in a row of double-digit decline in revenue when we came in. I came in originally as part of a consulting team, became part of the equity team, and then went out and built, kind of the sales and marketing and leadership teams. So you have a ship that's sinking. This is not a fun time, right? This is like an ugly experience. And so you're doing a transformation, like a turnaround, and you're doing a startup at the exact same time as what we ended up doing, which is like the two hardest things to do in business. And one of the lessons I would learn, and this goes back to becoming interdependent, right? So it's the paradigm of we,
Mm-hmm.
is what I call collective genius, which is the ideas lead to ideas. So there's no bad ideas. So think of it this way. We all just start putting our ideas in the water. You and I were talking about South Africa. So when I was in South Africa, we went cage diving, pardon me, for sharks, right? And so they do what's called chum the water, right? They put the chum in the water to attract the sharks. Well, you can chum the water with ideas, even the wrong idea. Because what happens is sometimes ideas lead to ideas. So even the wrong idea leads to the right idea. But here's the thing: you have to have a spirit of love and harmony, a spirit of collective genius, a spirit of interdependence, because no one wants to throw out a stupid idea that's then they're gonna get blown up. Everyone's like, "You're the heck, what kind of stupid idea is that?" What happens is this: even a wrong idea, people can say, "You know what? That's not it." Huh, but what if we tried this? And then that leads to another wrong idea. It's still not it, but we can all poke holes in it.
Right.
And that leads to another idea, which actually is like, oh, that's interesting. What if we tried this? So it was actually a decent idea. And then we tried this. Well, we're 7 or 8 ideas down the road before we find the idea. For us, we created I remember when we were putting it together, I was like, that's $1 billion idea. And I was wrong. It was a $2.5 billion idea. It was a bigger idea than I realized. But the point is, it took us months and months and months and months and months of grinding to get to those ideas. Well, all of those ideas came from the stupid, wrong, terrible ideas that we had at first, but we created a culture, created an environment where, best ideas on the table. Let's just go, like start the party, like chum the water. Let's get them out. Like where could we start with? One great question I like to ask leaders is if I had to do it, what would I do? Now, the way that our brain works is that your brain cannot not answer a question. And I know that sounds like a double negative sentence, but follow me through on this. Your brain cannot not answer a question. I'll prove it to you real quick. Watch this. So as you're listening, at the end of this, I'm going to ask you if your brain answered these questions. So watch this. Are you tall or short? Are you fast or slow? Would you rather read a book or watch a movie? Would you rather travel or stay home? How many of you, your brain has answered every single question I just asked you, right? It's just the way we're wired. You answer every question you're asked.
Yeah.
So what happens is when you ask yourself this question, if we had to do it, now the reason the if is so important is it lets your brain off the hook. I'm not saying we're going to do it, but if we had to, I'm not saying we're going to, but if we did, if we had to. Now you'll notice also the had. So Brendon Burchard wrote a book called High Performance Habits. And he said one of the characteristics of high performers is they raise necessity. What does that mean? It means things go from like, we should do it, or that'd be cool to do it, or man, I sure hope we do it, to like, we must do it. We have to do it. The necessity's higher.
Right.
It's funny, even with my book, and he teaches the same principle, but with my book, I've had the book in my heart, Greg, for 10 years and then 5 years. And just, you got the stories and you got the illustrations and it's in your heart. But it wasn't until I raised necessity enough to be like, doggone it, I'm getting this thing done. I'm going to put it on paper. I'm going to get it printed. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm finishing it. That you go from like someone being like, have you ever written a book? You're like, well, I'm going to, that kind of thing, to like, yes, I have it. I've written a best-selling book. Here it is, kind of thing. You raise necessity. That's what happens.
Yeah.
So if I had to do it, had is a necessity word, right? If I had to, if you had to, and you say, well, I don't have to. Okay, cool. I get it. But if you did have to, you had to do it, what would you do?
Right.
And you raise necessity saying, what would be, if you had to, meaning fear, right? Like they're going to kidnap your children if you don't do it, or pleasure. You'll make a bazillion dollars if you do it. If you had to do it, what would you do? And Greg, what will happen is you can start literally whiteboarding. Hey guys, if we had to do, what would we do? Stupid ideas first. Go. We just whiteboard. I'll tell you what we do. We do this. We do that. Do this. And all of a sudden you have this data dump of collective genius. And all of a sudden you're like, huh. I mean, obviously some of these won't work, but man, even that one that's crazy. What if we actually did do this? And people are like, that's actually interesting. What if we did? And then finance says, well, we can't do that. Okay, what if we did this then? Yeah, we could probably pull that off. Marketing goes, yeah, that's a good idea. If we did that, we could actually do this. And then sales, and then all of a sudden legal, yeah, but we can't do it. So we massage it. Next thing you know, we've got a freaking idea that's like, everyone's like, that's pretty hot. And that all started with just, if we had to do what we do, collective genius, the culture of interdependency, and knowing that the ideas will lead to the ideas. If we can create an environment where all the best ideas are celebrated, it's not just the hierarchy of no one can tell the emperor that they're naked.
Right. Right. I'm smiling as you're talking because first I do the identical exercise when it comes down to some of my leadership training, where I go, okay, here's the exercise. Don't think of the answers. My questions are a lot more inappropriate. Like, what color is your underwear? Which kid do you love the most? But the what we're doing and what you just demonstrated now was, it is impossible for your brain to not process that question.
That's right.
Even when you're sticking your fingers in the ear going, no, 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 you're like, what was that question? Oh, I shouldn't think of that answer. And even in some cases, it leads to different. And I call it creative combustion. In fact, it was my client's term, right? You get in the room with people and it's like just this explosion that comes from everyone putting in. The problem is you get the judgmental sort of tone in some of these meetings, which is, well, why should we do that? Worst question for human beings, by the way, is the question why. Right? I say this a lot to people, and you'll appreciate this one, which is, why will only give you the problem. It will never give you the answer. What and how will give us the answer, right? What do we want to do? How do we want to get there? And that's what you're talking about here, which is, if we had to do this, how or what would we do to make that happen? And it's all these ideas that come in, but it's really important that we hold the room in an environment where it's not a judgmental room, which is very hard for human beings to do.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we love and sometimes it's silent judgment, which we pick up on as people, right? Like I look across the room, I'm like, Justin's literally thinking I'm an idiot right now, right? And sometimes that might be true, but sometimes it's a lot of my perception that I build up from previous experiences. So I love that, man. I think that is awesome. So coming back to be the one, how we're showing up with responsibility. What's next? So now that we're interdependent, how do I show up effectively? How do I maintain that level of contribution and input and success?
Yeah. So and there's a couple formulas that I teach. I'll go fast through three of them because I think they feed each other. First one is this. It's to live an intentional life. So 4 words that changed my life. I'm sitting with John Maxwell, the world's foremost authority in leadership. We're in Costa Rica, and he's teaching a bunch of Costa Rican college students. And he stands up on the edge of the stage, holds his arm up like this. His interpreter walks over, holds his arm up, hasn't said anything for, tell you that there's one thing I could share with you that had the biggest impact in your life, it'd be this. It goes to the edge of the stage, holds his arm up, 20 seconds pass, 30, 45 seconds pass. And he finally says to him, he says, if there's only one thing I could share with you that had the most impact in your life, he says, live an intentional life. He said, all success is all uphill all the way. And he said, you don't accidentally go up hills. You only what? Intentionally go up hills. And he said, most people have uphill hopes and downhill habits. So you have to live an intentional life. And I was just like, man,
that's powerful.
Think about it. You ask yourself this question: how intentional am I being right now in my fitness? Right. Mm-hmm. So what's my weight goal? What's my body fat goal? What's my calorie goal each day, each week? What's my protein goal? What's my patterns for my fitness? Like, how intentionally being in fitness? What about like your spiritual life, like your spiritual health, right? Making sure your spirit's healthy. What is your intention right now? How intentional are you being? What about in your business? Like, how intentional are you being at casting out where the business is going and how we're going to get there, right? What about in your marriage? Or what about with your children? How intentional are you being with that 14-year-old child right now? Like not just, hey, how was school? Cool. See you later. Like, no, for real. It's like, what are you doing to deepen that relationship and strengthen that bond? So you start asking yourself, what am I doing to live an intentional life? First thing. Second thing is this: I teach a 3D vision. So there's an old Bible verse that says, where there is no vision, the people perish. Here's what I want you to think about. We want to simplify vision down to saying, if I have no vision, I'm screwed. That's not how it works. Where there is no vision, it's the people who perish, right? Now, they may not perish like they die, but man, they perish in unbelief. They perish in who they could have become. Where there is no vision from a marriage for the husband and wife, the family can perish. If there is no vision for the business, meaning the owner, the entrepreneur doesn't have a vision of where we're taking this whole thing, the what we could have grown this into perishes. It dies along the way. Right. And the vision answers a question. By the way, here we are at the time we're recording this right now is end of 2023, heading into 24. 24, at least in the States, will be an election year. There's global conflict right now. We're fighting inflation globally right now. Interest rates have been high. They're saying now they're going to go low, which will probably create hyperinflation. There's a lot of volatility underneath, right? Well, what vision does is it answers a question that we all have to answer in every area of our life when times are hard. So write this down. When times are tough, lead with vision. Why? Because vision answers a question that people need to have answered. That's how they make it through tough times. And here's the question: will it always be this way? Will it always be this way? If it's a tough time in a marriage, people are asking, is it always going to be this way? If the answer is yes, forget this, right? If the answer is no, we're going to make it through, then you'll navigate it differently. If your son or daughter is going through addiction right now and going through some really hard times, they're asking themselves, they're looking at you saying, is it always going to be this way? Because if it is, we have the highest suicide rates we've ever had in the history of the world for young men specifically. Like, is it always going to be this way? If someone thinks it's always going to be this way, they'll make different decisions. In your business right now, maybe the business is down, revenue's down, it's a tough time. Well, if it's always going to be this way, we're going to make very different decisions than if there's a vision and we're heading somewhere, there's hope of where the business is going to go, then we'll make different decisions. Okay. So vision is so important. So 3D vision. First thing you want to do is you want to define your vision. Take time to define it. We talked about high performance habits from Brendon Burchard. He said that when they did this study of high performers, biggest study in history, Greg, they would tap him on the shoulder and they'd say, hey, Greg, what's your latest dream? What's your latest vision? What are you working on right now? What's your latest goal? And high performers could answer that question 7 to 10 seconds faster than the rest of the population. Why? Because a high performer has defined the vision. It's a dominant thought. It's not in the back of their mind. It's on the tip of their tongue. They think about this stuff they define this stuff. They take time to be like, I'll tell you where we're going. This is what we're going to go do. This is what I'm working on, right? Second thing is, once you've defined it, then you got to declare it. You don't want to keep big dreams a secret. Now, I'm not saying you have to go tell it to your sister-in-law that's mean to you. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you find people that say, hey, listen, you got this. You declare it. You put yourself on the hook, right? As it were. You say, I'm going to go make this thing happen. So you define it, you declare it. And then the third D is you dedicate your life to it. You really dedicate yourself to it. It's easy to talk a big game. Thomas Monson says, stick to a task until it sticks to you. Beginners are many, finishers are few. You want to be a dedicated person. You're a finisher, not just a starter. So live an intentional life is kind of the way you get yourself saying, okay, I'm going to live an intentional life in all these key areas. Next thing is I'm going to create a 3D vision in these three areas, right? Define it, declare it, dedicate. And then the third one is what I call 3 C's. It's a success loop. So think of it this way. The success loop, each one feeds the last. And it's how you create momentum. Because as you know, Greg, momentum is the secret to life. Momentum is the secret to business. When we're just like, dude, just nothing's working, is whatever. What we're really saying is I got freaking no momentum right now. In fact, if anything, I have negative momentum. I'm going the wrong direction fast. And so how do we change the momentum where you're like, you got your pep in your step, shoulders back, chin up, let's go? First one is confidence. Believing in yourself is the foundation of your success. Do you believe in you? It's hard to get everyone else to believe in you if you won't even believe in yourself. The confidence leads to commitment. Now, commitment, my friends, is where think of it this way. Where there is no confidence, there is no commitment. So if you have no confidence that your exercise program and meal plan is going to work, you're not going to be very committed. If you have no confidence in the business plan, the commitment level is going to be low. So where there is no confidence, there's no commitment. But the more confident you become of like, yo, I can pull this off, I've done hard things, then you say, I'm not going to get blown out with every wind that blows. I'm committed. I'm going to go make this thing happen. Commitment leads to competence. So what is competence? That's your skill sets. You want to build skill above your talent. Talent your floor, skills are your ceiling. You want to build new skills above the talent. In today's changing marketplace, you have to have new skills. For example, the obvious buzzword right now would be AI, right? You're like, dude, if you don't figure out, and when I say you or your employees or somebody's got to be figuring this thing out to where you don't just get left behind because you didn't build the new skills. You stay up to speed. So the point is you're always building new skill above the talent. Don't rely on old talent forever. You got to build new skills. The new skills will keep you sharp. When your competency increases, in other words, you're highly skilled at what you do, you become the best at what you do. What happens? It feeds your confidence. Your confidence and feeds more commitment. You're like, guys, we got this. We're going to make this thing happen, which feeds more skill set development, which feeds the confidence you spend. Last thing I'd share is this. What do you do today if you don't have any confidence? What do you do today if you're just like, hey, I'm not feeling the vibe. I don't have any momentum. And it's a word that will get you into that loop. The loop gets you into, building some momentum, and it's courage. Courage is you move forward today when you don't see all the pieces fitting together yet. Courage is you take the first step. Courage is you write the book by starting today. Courage is you don't die with all your music still in you. Courage is you start moving forward. There's a story I tell there's a Christian pastor who wrote a book called Chase the Lion. Chase the Lion is a book by Mark Batterson. And he says tells a Bible story by a guy named Benaniah. He says the story says the guy chased a lion into a pit on a snowy day. All right, question for you is this. How many people do you know that chase lions into pits on snowy days? Like, not very many, right?
Yeah.
The point is, Benaniah was rare, and anything that's rare is more valuable. So a friendship that's rare is more valuable. A painting that's rare is more valuable. A diamond that's rare is more valuable. A person with courage, a business owner with courage, an executive with courage, a mom with courage, a dad with courage, they're rare. Anything that's rare is more valuable. The lion in the book is the dream. The lion's the vision. And he says that most people, when they hear the roar of the lion, to hear the roar of their dream, they ignore the roar or they run from the roar. He said, versus run to the roar. That's the person with courage. You run to the roar. Now, your courage, today, you might have to lean on courage to take action until you have tons of confidence. Right. Like, Greg, I'll give you an example. Today, in most areas of your life, my guess is you don't have to lean on a ton of courage because you build up confidence over time. The confidence, by the way, has come from your commitment. The commitment's built your competencies. You're just good at what you do. Where do we start? You start with courage, because over time you won't have to lean so much on courage. You're just leaning on confidence. You're like, yo, I got this thing. And the confidence will then feed the loop. So today, have courage. Today, take action. Today, be bold. Like, step up, make it happen, and get going. And stop holding yourself back and stop acting as if the purpose of life is to arrive safely at death. Like, get going and run to the roar.
I love that line that you just shared, right? Which is trying to get safely to death. I mean, you couldn't live more of a mediocre life with that type of belief. Just to paraphrase, I've been smirking and smiling for the audience here. You can't see me, but like, as Justin's talking, I'm smiling, and I'm doing so because I connect, I relate, and I agree with you 1000%. And where the smile comes from is your messaging is so on point, which is all of these things create a what I would call self-sustaining loop, right? Or self-sustaining cycle. I got to start with a little bit of this, but this will then lead me into this. This will lead me into this. And your confidence piece, which is where I think a lot of people battle with, right? I'm not confident. I don't have the self-esteem. I'm uncertain. I'm unsure. I failed a few times. I didn't like that feeling. It made me feel worse. My self-esteem got worse. But what do I do is, and I talk a lot about stepping off the carpet, right? As you step off your carpet's going to get bigger. You go to the edge of that carpet, you step off it, the carpet gets bigger, because it is through the action that we end up with the confidence, therefore go back into the commitment, to therefore go back into the competence, right? And then I gain more confidence, I get more confidence, and then my commitment, my commitment levels grow. So I become more committal towards some of the bigger goals. And it's a self-sustaining cycle. If you don't get in it, and your words is the loop, you're never going to start to get into that flow. And as you were talking about before, momentum is the hardest part. That is like, that's the analogy of, you got a train sitting on the tracks with a little stone on the track. How hard is it for that train to move? Extremely hard. But when that train is rolling and that little pebble or that little rock is sitting on the track, guess what happens? Gets smashed, turned to dust, and we just keep rolling.
Yes.
This is what we need to do. But what I love about what you talk about the most is, I use the line, action creates the path. You got to act, you got to move, you got to start, you got to push. And there's some basic principles that we can follow. And it's not about the instant gratification that most of us look for, which is the entitled mentality. It's the accountability and the personal responsibility that you described, which is very much around, okay, this is going to take a little bit of time. We're going to keep moving forward. Right.
I love that. There's two sayings I'd share with you. Do the thing you fear the most, and the death of fear is certain. So you do the thing that you fear the most. The thing you fear the most is speaking. The thing you fear the most is making that mistake. The thing you fear the most is making that invitation. The thing you fear the most is starting that conversation. You do the thing you fear the most, and the death of fear is certain. In other words, if you want to kill fear, do the thing. Move forward, have courage, take action, be bold. That's how you kill fear, is by doing the thing. Second thing is, second kind of philosophy to think about is to create your future with your future, not your past. Create your future with your future, not your past. In other words, you create your future, the one that you want to create, with your future vision of yourself, the future vision of who was I born to be, versus your past. Most of us say, well, you got to understand, I failed here, failed there, this happened, abuse, challenges, real life hurts, pains, whatever. So we're creating our future with our past, versus stopping and saying, I'm going to cast a vision out of who I'm trying to be and the person I was born to be, and I'm going to go create my future with that person. I'm going to step into that person, create the future with the future, not the past.
And for the audience, I'm smiling here, right? So I just had this conversation literally an hour ago with my mastermind group. I said, if we're not careful, we were sharing some quotes and sort of lessons and reflections of 2023. And my father used to say this. He used to say, if you're not careful, you'll make the decisions of tomorrow based on the feelings of the past.
That's so good.
It's use it, man. It's if you're not careful, you're going to make the decisions of tomorrow based on the feelings of the past. And it's the feelings that, it's not that we ignore them, right? In fact, it's maybe that's our alert system, which is, hey, the way I went at this last time, I don't want to feel like that again. So I'm going to make some adjustments. I'm going to move. Or, hey, that felt really good. I'm going to do it again. But by the way, you know what else you need when you go shark diving in South Africa? You need two things, right? You need you went cage and you had chum, but there's two very important things that you need for shark diving. You know what they are?
What's that?
You need a tiny little pocket knife. You know those little Swiss Army knives? Just not the big one, the tiny one, tiny one. And then you need a friend. And if anything goes wrong, what you do is you poke your friend and you swim the other way.
Yeah, no kidding. It's good advice.
Right, not good advice. That's selfish advice, opposite to what we're talking about here, right? You were also talking about vision. I want to share a personal story. So the pandemic kicks in, we go to zero in revenue.
Hmm.
Every contract by March is canceled, right? I want to say, we don't need to get into the number, but it was a large amount, and it was like, what the fuck, right? And then we had enough money in the bank account, and we had a line of credit that I looked at the team. I said, look, why don't we just we'll keep running at this stuff, right? We'll keep you employed and we'll keep you going, and it's all good and yada yada. And it was one of the most brilliant years because it really came back to the purity of the work. And we went out and we did everything for free. So we put on all the training for free, and we called clients and we said, if you've been affected in revenue, you could send people for free. If you haven't been affected in revenue, we're going to do the honor system, pay for it. But it was not a revenue year. In fact, we came in not probably, we definitely came in the red. But it was an amazing year, right? It was an amazing year of interdependence. Us, we, a group moving forward. Anyway, year 2 of the pandemic, we exploded and scaled, right? Because now things like coaching and development, training really doubled down and, went virtual. And through that experience, I went and I hired a head of sales, which was a really bad result. Right at the end of the year, cost a lot of money, did not make the right decisions. I mismanaged them. From a place of responsibility, it was me. I should have been more on top of things, right? But either or, we parted ways, and best wishes, and I'll take my licks, and I'll take those lessons lived and lessons learned. And then I said, this was this year, and I said, you know what? I'm really not interested in bringing in another person to head up sales for right now. What I want to do this year in the business, I just want to focus on the delivery, and I want to just sort of, be still with it, and, make sure that we've got a strong sort of program and content and delivery, and let's just go back to doing the work. Anyway, fast forward this whole conversation, making sure that I'm not making the same mistakes of the past or letting my limiting beliefs of the past influence my decisions of the future. I've just put out a contract to a new head of growth and business development, which I'm very excited about. But at first I had to challenge myself because I got into this like, oh, fuck, what if we do it again?
Of course.
$1 million and I don't want to go down there. And I had to say, no, wait a minute, hold on a second. If I'm not careful, I'm literally going to recreate that past into the future. The idea is correct, but it needed to be evolved. So the role and the position is correct. And now it's about putting things in place and building that interdependent sort of group again. So as you were sharing this, I went, you know what? This is a real-time event and experience that I'm going through right now. And it's very true. Man, I can't believe we're at the top of the hour already. This really flew by. Justin,
brother, I loved it. I loved it.
Man.
Hope we do it again.
For sure, we could absolutely do it again. And, I got to tell you, I mean, I come into some of these podcasts and you meet people for the first time, and obviously you get the bio and stuff. And, I think what you're doing is amazing. It's really the definition of why we do the podcast, which is what do we do to be a better human? And your story of like trials, tribulation, perseverance, pushing through, but with the formulas that have come out of this, this is how I'm going to duplicate my success again. This is how I'm going to live my life intentionally. I love the fact that that's one of your key principles and points here, which is be extremely intentional, and I call it objective, about what you're doing and where you're going and how you're getting there. And that comes back to what my goals are with this business, right? I want to take it beyond me. I want to take this type of learning out to the world and just help people get better, right? Justin, at the end of the episode, we come to the most important question, which is the better human question. But before we go there, let's drop some of your information and links for the audience. So if people wanted to learn more about you, obviously they want to pick up the book. If they're interested in getting some coaching or getting into your programs, how can they get more information on that?
Yeah, so you can get the book wherever you get your favorite books, right? Amazon or wherever it is that you get your favorite books. You can go to iamjustinprince.com, and that has just all my socials. But I'm across all social platforms. I put out a ton of content, and it's stuff that I think will help you to be the one in your life in kind of every key area. So if I can add value or serve you or support you or your business, I'm certainly that's what I have a lot of passion in helping people to do.
It's amazing. And I recently connected with you on Instagram. You're putting out a ton of content. In fact, I'm going to add you right now to LinkedIn as well, because I don't think I added you there. Justin Prince. Plus, with a name like Justin Prince, I got to ask you, is that your real name or is that your stage?
That's my name. That's my real name, bro. Yeah. So it was funny when they were building some of the branding stuff. One of the branding expert guys goes, "Your name's perfect." And I said, "Why is that?" And he said, because he goes, the Prince is obvious, that's cool. He goes, but the Justin is 6 letters, the Prince is 6 letters, so it's like symmetrical. I'm like, all right, bro. I mean, whatever. So if it's not like Alexander Prince or something, where it's like it's like top heavy,
It's true. It flows. Actually, way to go to your marketing person for picking that up and the branding person. All right. So as mentioned at the end of the episode, we come to the most important question, which is, what do you think we could all do to be better humans tomorrow?
Yeah, listen, that better humans tomorrow starts with better decision making today, right? So better decisions always start with better questions. We talked about questions earlier. The question is this: who was I born to be? And once you step into that, you start be that one today, right? Go make decisions today to be that one today. The way you show up in your own, the way you care about yourself, right? Like, meaning, are you emotionally and physically taking care of yourself? The way you start caring about others, the way you start caring about your business, your community, your faith, your church, your, the people that you associate with. It all starts with you understanding that you're the one, and go be that one today.
It's amazing, man. That's amazing. Awesome answer to the better human question. All right, to the audience, go follow Justin Prince on Insta, on LinkedIn, on TikTok, on Facebook, on whatever platform you're on. Check out his website, iamjustinprince.com. Is that correct?
That's right.
Awesome. We're going to have all of this in the show notes as well for people. They could click the links. And really appreciate your time. I think this is a great sort of conversation, specifically, as it's coming out in the early 2024, for us to think about what we want this year to do, year to be, right? I want to be the one this year. So that's awesome. And I love your book. The branding is awesome. All right, to the audience, if you like today's episode, don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to share. Stay happy, stay healthy, and we will see you next week.